And here's the interesting thing too, Trev, about them is they're not there. We just spent a lot of time about their offense, but that's not the best part of this football team. The best part of this football team is their defense. They have a very good defense. I mean, let's look at the numbers, Trev. You had it in your preview here at Irish Breakdown. Navy is the number one scoring defense in the country. Although someone pointed out to me today that if Notre Dame did not give up those 2 garbage touchdowns, Bill Trocchi actually said this to me. I have to go back and look at it. But Bill Trocchi said if Notre Dame didn't give up the 2 touchdowns in the final 30 seconds against Georgia Tech and Virginia, that they would have the number one scoring defense in college football. Thought that was interesting. But they rank number 1 in scoring defense. They're number 5 in total defense, number 13 in yards per play. They're the number 3 rushing defense in the country. They're 15th in yards per rush. They are 32nd in passing yards allowed, 12th in yards allowed per attempt, 2nd in yards allowed per completion. They have the number 1 red zone defense in the country. So even though statistically their offense is more impressive because of the nature of a triple option team, so you're going to be first in rushing yards or second in rushing yards every year, even when you're not good. You know, you're going to be super high in yards per attempt and yards per completion in the pass game and fewest sacks allowed because you don't throw the ball at all. And you know, their offense is very good at all those things, but they're number 22 in the country in scoring offense and number 45 in the country in scoring or total offense, where they're 1st and 5th in defense. Now, their offense being on the field a lot helps their defense keeps points down and yards down. But even if you look at the per play averages, Trevor, they're still really good. They're 13th in the country in yards allowed per rush. I mean, yards allowed per play. They're 15th in the country in yards allowed per rush. They're 12th in the country in yards allowed per pass attempt. So they don't allow. And they do that while only ranking 64th in sacks. So this is the side of the ball that I shouldn't say it's the best part of their team, but it's I may want to walk that part back. I don't know that I want to say it's the best part of their team, but it's been the biggest difference between what they were last year and what they are this year is the improvement they made on defense. I think that's I'm probably more comfortable saying that than I am the other way around. And it's been it's actually kind of fun to watch them because they're so sound and they're very well coached and they're physical. That's the thing, based out of a 3-4 defense. But they'll mix up their fronts. But let's talk about their defense, Trev. What was your thoughts kind of as you go through? Obviously, you broke down the stats. You looked at the depth chart. What are the things you see when you go through and break down this Army football team?
They play really well as a unit. They swarm the football. And like we talked about earlier in the show, the pads pop when you play Navy or when you play Army, man. I mean, they do. They fly downhill. They are not afraid of contact. This might be one of, if not the most physical team that Notre Dame has played yet this season. I mean, in the second half of the season, Notre Dame kind of ramped it up and they started playing more physical football and winning more in the trenches. You know, defensively, like the young linebacking core has grown every single week and they've been flying around the field and the pads have been popping. That's been Navy since week 1. Mm-hmm. I mean, this might be one of the few teams on Notre Dame's schedule that can kind of go pound for pound with them in terms of, just laying the wood. I mean, it's one of those games that, you know, Notre Dame is going to be taking some ice baths afterwards, I guess, if that makes sense. That is the one noticeable thing that jumps off the screen at me when I watch this team play. But, you know, Army's a very – They don't do a lot of things great athletically, I guess, if that makes sense. They are not – no player jumps off the page of, you know what, you know, they're fundamentally sound. They hit really hard, but this guy is a dude. They just play very, very well as a unit. They have some decent corners, I will say. Army as a team has generated a good amount of interceptions this year. I think they have 2 or 3 guys on their team that have at least 3 interceptions, and they have like 6 or 7 guys that have at least 2. And they are all in the secondary, I think, for one linebacker. It's like a safety, multiple corners, a nickel. So they do a good job of playing well as a unit. They are in the right spot at the right time. They're very fundamentally sound, and they hit you really hard. I mean, those are the 3 main things that I take away from watching this Army team.
Well, the other thing too, Trevor, and I'm kind of having I'm putting all these down so we can kind of compare them to what they are, like with their offense, but it's a similar thing that you're looking at here. And that is that this is a team that's got size up front. And we don't normally see that with the service academies. You just don't often see a lot of size. You don't see, teams say, hey, well, you're just going to kind of bully this team. But I'm looking at the starting defensive line. So like there are 3 defensive linemen, and then their stand-up outside linebacker that is a lineman. 6'3", 280, 6'1", 301, and 6'5", 275. Like they're not this really small, like undersized group of guys like you normally see from these option teams. It's a different animal. And that's something, and it's not just the starters. I mean, their backups have some size to them as well. They got a 6'6", 240-pound guy that they bring off the bench. They've got their other backup nose is a big guy that's like 280 plus. So like they've got some size to them, especially in the starting lineup. They got a 6'3", 265-pound guy coming off the bench, right? Where, they're bringing in that. And then their linebackers aren't real big guys, but they're physical. They're like 225-ish, but they're physical. And that's the thing that's interesting about this game is they're not the kind of line you can just go bully just because you're bigger than they are. They actually have good size, and and like you said earlier, they compete. Trev, they get after it. There's no doubt they really get after it in the run game, and that factors into why they have the number 1 run defense in the country, which I believe they still have, right? We just looked at that. Yeah, they still have the number 1 rate. No, they're down to number 3 in the country in rush defense. But they are behind Ole Miss and Indiana. They're at 82.6, and they're closer to Ole Miss at number 2 than they are to Ohio State at number 4. So this is a legitimate run defense, in my opinion. Now, here's some things to consider as well. We're going to find out I think that Navy Army is a legitimately I think this is probably the best group of 5 defense I've seen so far from a production standpoint, results, physicality standpoint. We're going to find out really how good they are this weekend, though. And you started to get a little bit of an answer to that against North Texas, because that team was coming in scoring 40 points a game. They held them to 3 points in the game. But coming into this game, this is the ranks of the teams that they have played in scoring offense. Okay. 108, 111, 122, 90, 93, 32. And that team, by the way, had 28 points against them. That was ECU, right after they fired their coach, by the way. 127, then, of course, North Texas at 16. That's the scoring offenses. Here's the ranks on total offense that they faced. 90th, 111th, 124th, 72nd, 62nd, 39th, ECU, 125th, and 3rd. They have that team that ranked 3rd to 3 points. Here's the rushing offenses they faced this year. 64th, 115th, 125th, 76th, 97th, 75th, 14th. That's Air Force. And then North Texas is 72nd. So they have done a very good job this year shutting down opponent run game. Ironically, the team that ran the most against them was Lehigh. Is the team that ran for the most yards against them at 172 in the opener. That's it. They have held, let's see here, rushing defense. They have held 3, 4, 5, 6 of their 9 opponents to less than 90 yards rushing. They have held 3 of their opponents to minus 50 yards rushing, including minus 5 from Temple. So, and they held Air Force to 117 yards. And let's be honest, Air Force isn't that good this year. We can be honest about that. Now they get to face a Notre Dame offense that ranks 12th in the country in rushing and that ranks 4th in the country in yards per rush with the 3 teams. And by the way, Notre Dame is the number 1 rushing offense in the country amongst Power 4 teams in yards per attempt. The only teams ahead of them are Army, Boise, and New Mexico. That's it. So this is a challenge unlike anything that Navy has faced this season, if we're being honest, right? And that's where you look and say, okay, this is where Notre Dame needs to be able to take advantage, right? This is what right? And you talk about the teams that they've played, Trevor, and they have not played a tough schedule. But again, what are good teams supposed to do when they play bad teams? Dominate. And they've dominated, which is evidence that this is a good football team.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the thing that I encourage everybody is to not look at this as it's a service school. It's Army. Like guys, we've already kind of done this whole song and dance when Notre Dame played Navy. This is a good football team. Bryan and I aren't sitting here trying to convince everybody that Army is about to go compete for a national championship because they held North Texas to 3 points. Like we're painting the picture that this is a quality opponent, because it is. Like Army poses, much like how Army has not faced a Notre Dame team that's like this. Army has not faced a team that has Notre Dame's size and athleticism and speed. Sure, Notre Dame has also not faced an offense like Army's. Yes, Navy was also like the triple option. Blake Horvath is not the runner that Bryson Daly is. They're not.
Yeah.
And Navy also didn't have the size and the strength that Army did. So it's both can be said. It's just painting the picture that this is a difficult opponent, and one that Notre Dame is going to have to be very disciplined when they play, because there's a chance that if one side of the ball doesn't play well, Notre Dame might end up with 6 offensive possessions or 7. And like I said earlier in the show, Notre Dame had 5 scoreless offensive possessions in the first half. Can't happen. So this is going to be a game that Notre Dame's going to have to be up for. Absolutely.
The funny thing is, you've got some people in the chat that they just want to talk about how they suck, and like, this is why you guys do this to yourselves, because you disrespect your opponent all week, and then when Notre Dame dominates, you're just like, well, you're supposed to dominate. Like, instead of appreciating how good they've played, this is a good football team. Does that mean that Army's not good? No, it doesn't. That Notre Dame's not. Notre Dame should beat them. Notre Dame, I think, will beat them. But if you can't respect your opponent, then you're just not going to enjoy what you're seeing as much. This is not going to be an easy win for Notre Dame. Can Notre Dame win convincingly? Of course. They're going to have to earn it. If they do beat Army 42-10, as someone is saying it will be earned. It will be physical. It will be a tough, hard-nosed, hard-fought 42-10 victory. And as grown-ups, we can talk about how good the opponent is, and it doesn't have to be taken by you that means we're saying Notre Dame's not good. Because you can respect your opponent and still say your team is better. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give you guys a proper appreciation. People who have not seen Army play and just assume because they're doing what you said, Trevor, this is a service academy. Well, okay. I've seen Army play a lot this year. This is a good football team. This is a better football team than a lot of the teams that Notre Dame has been beaten up on recently. Like, they would smash Florida State. They would probably beat Virginia, in my opinion. I think so. I think Virginia would have a tough time stopping Army.
Yeah,
they'd probably beat Stanford, to be honest with you. We'll see what they do against Navy. That'll be an interesting game. This is a good football team. It's a good football team. And you need to be able to appreciate that and respect that, because this is a good football team. And if you're falling for the trap of what the national people like to do, which is talk down every opponent that Notre Dame plays, and you're falling into that trap. Don't do that. This is a good football team. This is a very well-coached football team. And this is a very physical football team. Georgia Tech was a very physical football team too. Somebody said, well, I don't buy that they're physical because I watched Notre Dame shut down Georgia Tech. What does that have to do with anything? Whatever Notre Dame did to Georgia Tech has nothing to do with what Army is. Just because they're physical doesn't mean that Notre Dame sucks and they're not going to be physical and going to get beat. What we're saying is it's a physical football team. Notre Dame needs to go out and handle their business and be prepared for a physical football game. Doesn't mean Notre Dame can't handle it and can't win, but it's speaking about who they are. This is a good football team. Is it one Notre Dame should win? Guys, there's a reason they're a 14-point favorite. But this is a good football team. And there's also a reason why they're only a 14-point favorite and not a 20-something point favorite like they were for other. What was the spread in the Navy game? Wasn't it 20-something?
Something, yeah. It was close. I think it was like 18.5 at one point. Yeah.
So this is a good football team. And Jeff Monken's done a heck of a job getting them ready to play. There's no question about it. But as we were trying to allude to, Trevor, this is a test unlike anything Army has faced so far this season, in my opinion. And here's the biggest concern for me. Notre, when you look at this matchup, if you're looking at it from a Notre Dame standpoint, it's if your offense comes out and is not efficient, if your defense comes out and has a slow start, then this is the kind of game where they can make this a really short game. And that's the thing is like the things that Notre Dame has not done well, you can't afford to do against Army for the same reasons you couldn't afford to do them against Navy. And that's going to be a big key. So we're going to talk a lot more about it on Thursday, but like you said, no one has run right at Notre Dame for a while. And that was the weirdest thing about the Georgia Tech game because they didn't really try to do that either. And that's what I want to see if Army can do.
Yeah, I agree. I have two major areas of concern. I don't want to say major, but two areas of concern for Notre Dame in this game. One is offensive efficiency. That is something that they just haven't shown all year. And in games like this, you have to be efficient. Now, mind you, one of their most efficient games was against Navy, who does not run the same offense as Army, but it's the most like out of the other opponents that they've played, right? But I'm worried about that. But even Navy didn't try to run directly at Notre Dame. Argument can be made. The last team that did that was Northern Illinois. Like that over the stretch of the game.
Just be physical, come right at them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the last opponent that tried to do it.
Louisville didn't. Miami, Ohio didn't. Purdue doesn't know how. Stanford didn't. Georgia Tech oddly didn't.
Nope.
Navy didn't. Florida State certainly didn't. They don't know how. But I mean, Florida State did have some success running right up the middle.
My area of concern is when teams have not done it for the entire game because for whatever reason, like we alluded to earlier in the podcast, teams just still for some reason try to out-athlete Notre Dame and try to push it to the perimeter and just think that this is like the Notre Dame defense of old that doesn't have wheels like they do.
Get that. I don't
it's
get
weird.
that.
But teams have had success against Notre Dame when they've ran right at them.
Yeah.
Which is
now
Army's
part of that's because Notre Dame's tried to dare some teams to do that. Because it's like that's not what they do best.
Sure.
What made the Georgia Tech game interesting is that Notre Dame took away what Georgia Tech did best, which is running up the middle. Mm-hmm. And to a degree kind of force the ball out. And Georgia Tech played right into Notre Dame's hands by doing that. So we're going to see because like you said, this is a level of speed that Army hasn't seen so far this season. And so it's for Notre Dame, it's, hey, can you, because like the other thing about Army that you look at their statistics too, Trevor, they are number one in the country in fewest tackles for loss allowed. Mm-hmm. Because they don't pitch the ball a ton. They are downhill, like you said. Everything is quickly getting downhill. They'll pitch it, but I mean, probably 7-8 pitches a game, maybe.
Yeah.
A lot of it's just right downhill, right in the A gap, off tackle, quarterback duck, quarterback follow, counter, inside zone, stuff like that. The quarterback outside zone where he's basically you're just stretching until he finds a hole. And then he hits it. And he hits it quick too. Like he'll be like slow, boom, gets through the hole. So I just I'm curious to see what Notre Dame's game plan is against Army, because it's almost like you want to dare them to get the ball outside, but then if you're not disciplined outside, they can get some gash plays on you. So it will be curious because one thing that Al Golden has been very good at is we're going to take away what you do best.
Yeah.
Well, how do you do that against Army? That's how do you do that? How do you take the ball out of the quarterback's hands? What's your game plan going to be? And do you expose yourself to other big play opportunities if you do that?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going to be very interesting. Very interesting.
I'm going to be interested to see what he does on the defensive front, on the defensive line. I'm going to be interested to see what personnel groupings he puts in, mm-hmm. because I think you could see a lot of Gabe Rubio and Riley Mills. I think because they kind of been coming out in different duo sets, right? Especially when Howard Cross was healthy. When Howard Cross was healthy, it was him and Riley Mills out there. And then when they would rotate, it'd be Gabe Rubio, and then it would be Donnie Heinisch. Right now, obviously, that Howard Cross is hurt. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. RJ Oben has actually been pretty decent in the run game.
Yeah, run game, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's been pretty solid in the run game. This is going to be another game where, I won't get too much into it now because I know we're going to talk about this throughout the week, but it could be another big Josh Burnham game. Like it's going to be interesting to see what they do on the defensive front to help disrupt it. Because if there's one thing that will stop the triple option, it's a lot of interior pressure, but they do a really good job of not letting plays get blown up in the backfield. Yeah. So really interesting.
Yep. And one of the things that we'll discuss in future shows tomorrow, and especially on Thursday in the Keys to Victory show, is going to be how does Notre Dame use their athleticism against Navy in this game on both sides of the ball. That's going to be a very, very interesting part of this matchup. So, and somebody asked, I think it's a fair question. Somebody asked, do you risk playing an injured Howard Cross or rest him for South Carolina? I mean, look, I'm all hands on deck in this game. If he's healthy enough to play, I mean, you can't afford. If you don't win this game, then it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's again kind of the common theme of it's weird that this is the all hands on deck game. Notre Dame Army, but the situation is what it is. And Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman and the rest of the coaching staff have shown, like, if a player is good to go, they will play them. Like, it hasn't been but we might sit him because of who's coming up.
I mean, if anything, I'd say I'd rather sit him against USC than Army.
Yeah, agreed.
Because Donovan Heinisch is going to project better in that game. I mean, you know what I mean? Like this is a game where, like, okay, if one of your corners was banged up, like if Benjamin Morrison was still playing with a sore shoulder, you say, maybe you sit him this game, and then get him ready for USC. But with your front seven guys, like, look, I'm going to need you for this game. We can give me a rest next week. You know what I mean? Like next week against USC, that's when you need your athletes. This week, it's like you need your big boys ready to play.
Yeah.
But if he's not good to go, I wouldn't play him. Like, I mean, you don't need to put him out there if he's 70%.
Right.
Because 70% Howard Cross is not better than 100% Donovan Heinisch or 100% Gabriel Rubio, in my opinion. So that's the thing that you have to kind of look at. So we're going to see how it's going to play out, man. But I'm very much looking forward to this matchup, Trevor. It is like I said, it's a great opportunity for Notre Dame to go out there and make a statement against a good football team that the committee respects, even though some Notre Dame fans may not respect it, but the committee certainly respects this football team. And, as I said, you look at the weekend, Notre Dame, I wish the rankings came out. Like, I wish they did like a Sunday night show instead of Tuesday. I really wish they would do it sooner. But, Notre Dame plays Army, who was ranked 24th last week. We'll see where they are this week. Number 9 Miami plays Wake Forest, who's 4-6. Number 11 Ole Miss plays 5-5 Florida. Number 14 SMU plays at Virginia. Have you noticed how many teams that SMU has played the week after Notre Dame? They've gotten very fortunate. They've had multiple games this year where they've had the week after Notre Dame plays them. I think most of their common opponents have been that way, but this will be another game where they get that opportunity. You have Georgia hosts UMass. Tennessee hosts 2-8 UTEP. UMass is also 2-8. They just fired their head coach. Texas hosts 4-6 Kentucky. Penn State plays at 6-4 Minnesota. BYU, who will drop below Notre Dame, plays at 8-2 Arizona State. That's one of the sneakier best games of the week.
Yeah,
by the way, Desmond Howard completely clowned himself this weekend. Did you see that comment? He's like, "Why are we talking about Arizona State?" Like, dude, this is why you just totally gave all the anti-ESPN people more ammo to not respect ESPN because you had no clue that those were two good football teams. Total clown show. But you look at the rest of the weekend, Trevor, like the other top teams that are in contention, maybe with being around Notre Dame. Alabama plays at 5-5 Oklahoma. Texas A&M plays at 4-6 Auburn. Very sneaky game for Texas A&M. You hope that they're not looking past Auburn for Texas. And then, of course, LSU plays home against Vanderbilt in a battle of unranked teams. I just had to say that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's going to be a wild weekend. But there's that big noon game, and then there's the night game with Notre Dame and Army, and those are the two big games of the weekend. And I think that helps. That it works out perfectly for Notre Dame, Trevor, from a scheduling standpoint, because there's going to be so many teams, so many voters and pollsters and fans and different people that are going to be tuning into that game, because what else are they going to watch?
Yeah,
let's look at the 7 p.m. games: Boise State at Wyoming, Washington State at Oregon, Alabama at Oklahoma, Texas A&M at Auburn, Vanderbilt at LSU, and Cincinnati at Kansas State. That's what Notre Dame is competing with for eyes on Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, the only other one that sounds like it could be interesting would be Washington State at Oregon. But outside of that,
It's Washington State at Oregon State.
At Oregon State.
Yeah, I misspoke. It's at Oregon State.
Okay.
Oregon, I believe, is off this weekend. They have a very weird late bye because they're 11-1 right now after beating Wisconsin.
They have a bye week, and then they play one more game,
and then the 8 Big Ten title game. Yeah, very odd. It's like as dumb as having one after week 1. I've never understood that either.
No.
Yeah. So but like that's what they're competing against. I mean, the next best game is what? Alabama at 5-5 Oklahoma. Alabama's a 14-point favorite. A&M at Auburn. A&M only being a 2.5-point favorite, I thought was really odd.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, really odd. At 4-6 Auburn, I think that's something Mike Elko is going to use to his advantage.
I think so too.
Yeah, so it's going to be a very unique weekend. And as we said, Trev, at the beginning, it's a great opportunity for Notre Dame to make a big statement in this game. It really is. It really is. Joe Marciano said, watch out for Florida at Ole Miss. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but that game's in the afternoon. That's a 12 o'clock game. That game's going to be competing against Ohio State and Indiana.
Right.
So, like, the games we listed off are all night games. That's the night slate for the weekend, competing against Notre Dame for eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting, and it's a great opportunity for Notre Dame to go out there and remind everyone why they're a top team. You know, because like I swear I started reading some of the articles, and everybody's got Notre Dame in their playoff, and I started hearing some of the same crap you heard after the Texas A&M game, like, oh, they're a lock, they're a shoe-in. Only question is where they should be ranked. And I'm like, hold on a second. We heard the same thing in week 2. And that's to a degree, Trevor, why I think this is a bit of a litmus test for Notre Dame, because how do the Notre Dame players get up for a game like this? It's Army. Do they have the attitude that some of the fans have? It's Army. It's no big deal. Do they get caught up in the moment of Yankee Stadium and the Shamrock jerseys and all that? I mean, do they have the same focus they need to have in a game like this? That's a question. That's what I mean. That ultimately is what's going to determine the outcome of this game is. Does Notre Dame come in here focused like, hey, we're playing a top 25 team away from home. We've got to be locked in and ready to play. Or is it, hey, we've shown everybody who we are. We're the big boys now. Check us out. Look how great we are at Notre Dame, which is how they felt about themselves after Texas A&M. And that's going to be a very interesting piece, which is why I'm glad Marcus Freeman is not pretending like the Northern Illinois game didn't happen with his football team. He's reminding them of from what he says, every week. Let's not forget what happens when we don't play Notre Dame football. And this is another week. Or does Army being ranked help keep them focused and ensures that they come out and play their best? That's what we don't know. We're talking about young men. We don't know the answer to that. We don't know what version of we're going to get. I'm encouraged that we've seen a pretty good version of Notre Dame week after week after week, but that's always true until that one game where it doesn't happen. You know what I mean? And it's an unknown, but a very important part of this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, success on Saturday is going to come down to what Marcus Freeman's been harping on the last, every single week since the Northern Illinois game, mental and physical preparation. From a physical standpoint, we just spent the last 2 hours talking about how physical of a football team Army is, right? And I would make the argument that after watching them play, they might be the most physical team that Notre Dame has faced in quite some time, So this season, quite some time. From a mental preparation standpoint, you have all of the distractions in the world. The media is finally back on your side, talking about how you're shooing for the playoffs and and how they're a lock for probably a home playoff game, depending on where they fall. Now it's just a question of who they're going to play. You got the fancy Shamrock Series jerseys. You're playing at Yankee Stadium. It's another night game. So if Notre Dame comes out and plays a solid, fundamentally sound, aggressive football game, that's going to be a testament to that I can confidently say, on top of this being the 9th straight win for this football team, that they have truly put and learned the valuable lessons of that loss in Northern Illinois behind them. And now they can focus, and it's, faceless opponent. It's, all of those things. It's Notre Dame is now playing their standard of football, which will put me in a much more comfortable spot when I'm talking and thinking about this football team.
They have a chance to end the year with their longest regular season win streak since 2020.
Yeah.
And if you think this year's schedule is soft, go back and remind yourself what that 2020 schedule looked like, especially since Clemson played Notre Dame without 3 of their best players, including Trevor Lawrence. And there is a lot at stake. You just never know if the players are going to see it the same way we do.
Right.
You never know that are they going to see it in the same historical context that we do, or are they just so locked into what's in front of them that they don't need to see that? They don't need that focus. I mean, that's going to be the key. That's what Marcus Freeman and his staff have in front of them, is how do we keep this team focused, and how do we keep this, like, does Mike Denbrock, is he happy with not happy? I'm sure he's not happy with the way the game went last week, but does he look at it as an opportunity to say, hey, look, we didn't play well from a focus standpoint, and does that allow him to really, pound that drum this week of, hey guys, that's not good enough, and to get them ready to go? Like, there's just so many different of those storylines that this and look, the national media is going to dismiss this game if Notre Dame wins and wins convincingly, but I don't think the committee will, and that's why it matters, and that's why you hope this team is focused and locked in coming into this game. So
absolutely.
Trevor, anything you'd like to discuss about this game, or we're kind of done with the show, but if there's something else you'd like to chat about, we can just talk about that a little bit. Oh, I did want to talk to we had an intel piece on Justin Thurman decommitting. So I gave some backstory on kind of how that happened. That was more of a mutual parting of ways. I have a great deal of respect for Justin Thurman and his family. I'm happy for him that he found a new home and a place that's a better fit for him as a football player. He would have been a great fit at Notre Dame as a student athlete, but I just felt like it was going to be tough for him to work up the depth chart at running back. And we broke down kind of how that whole thing went, but happy that he was able to get where he got to. So don't really plan on spending a whole lot more time on that. We had an intel piece when it happened at Irish Breakdown, boards at irishbreakdown.com. But anything else, Trev? I know tonight we're going to have real quick. Tonight we will, if you guys are listening now, go subscribe to the CFB Nation channel. So we're going to go live when the playoff rankings start. I believe is it 7, right, Trevor? Am I correct on that? I believe it's at 7. Let me go look at the live here real quick.
Yeah, last
7
week.
o'clock.
Yeah, last week it started a little later because they were fitting it in between basketball games.
So we'll start at 7 o'clock on the CFB Nation channel. We'll go live. It'll be Bill Troche and myself. We'll see who else wants to join us. So we'll have the live recap. So as they announce the teams, we'll break it down and talk about it nationally. And then after that show, probably around 8 o'clock, we will then 8:30. We'll see. That's why you got to hit that subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll then go live on the Irish Breakdown channel to focus more on the Notre Dame aspect of it. So we'll break that ranking down tonight. So Trev will be with me at least for one of those shows. I got to talk to him about the other one. Haven't talked to him about that one yet. And then tomorrow, obviously, buy, sell, hold. Tomorrow, Thursday, we'll do our keys to victory and our predictions. Friday, mailbag. I don't know if, Trev, I forget what time your flight is on Friday. What time's your?
Yeah, I'll be traveling at like 8 a.m. And then I don't get into New York until like 1.
So you won't be on the mailbag with me on Friday. I remember I did something. I couldn't remember if I got you. I got you the late flight on Sunday, right?
Yep.
That's when I got you the late flight. Okay, so Trev will be traveling on Saturday. And so after Thursday, you guys might not see Trev for a few days. So enjoy it. because he won't be on the post-game show with us either. So if you're at Yankee Stadium, say hi to my guy. But we're going to have a very busy week, no doubt about it, guys, especially tonight, 7 o'clock, CFB Nation. We'll be going live on the CFB Nation channel. So you guys make sure you subscribe to that. Make sure you also have notifications turned on for that. We'll definitely have some fun talking about the rankings tonight. I'm very curious to see what movement there's going to be. I think there's going to be some shockers tonight. I really do. I don't know what that'll be. I hope that they don't include Notre Dame. Unless it's a good thing for Notre Dame, like they finally realize Penn State's not that good and move them down a little bit. But, you hope it's not like, let's pretend Georgia's great again and put them way up. But, that concerns me a little bit. But we'll see. I'm very curious to see how all those things shake out and see how the committee handles all that. But we'll break all that down tonight. And then, of course, afterwards, we will have our Notre Dame specific breakdown on the Irish Breakdown podcast. So, hey, folks, on your way out, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. Make sure you lock in with us tonight at 7 o'clock on CFB Nation. Myself, Bill Trotri, we'll have at least one other team member. We'll be going live tonight, breaking down the whole playoff rankings. Then after that, we will then go live on Irish Breakdown and look at it from more of a Notre Dame specific standpoint. And then, of course, take a look at some of the games this weekend that are going to have the biggest impact on the new rankings. So we'll have a lot to talk about tonight. So for Trevor, I'm Bryan. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate y'all very much, and we'll talk to you again here very soon on CFB Nation and the Irish Breakdown podcast.